What's really good, everybody? This is Nathan Albach, and welcome to the podcast where we get into people's stories and go down a bunch of rabbit holes about what's really good in the world. So much is going on right now. Brand Twitter was out of control last week. It's super hot in the media with this whole Sunny D tweet that went viral and pissed a bunch of people off because it was sort of interpreted as them commodifying depression, essentially. Then the Netflix Twitter account later on insinuated that they were horny. So yeah, just not a great week for brands who practice this whole humanization thing on social media. And I know a lot of these social media managers and the work itself it's just very gray right now. I mean, there's just a lot of change happening in the landscape of social media in general and in culture in general. So a lot of like walking a thin line for brands that definitely needs to be talked about more. And hopefully I'll be getting to cover the topic at large on the podcast coming up, just to kind of lay out as many thoughts on everything as I can, because this isn't something that's going to go away. It's only going to get more polarized and more integrated into our daily lives. So it's good to stay aware of what's happening and just keep these conversations going. Anyway, now for today's podcast, I had the pleasure of speaking with Gracie Hughes, who you may know as @CottonCanDaddy on Twitter. It's such a good handle. She's a joke writer and another one of these fully immersed personalities online, along with people like Viking, who I did an interview with recently, and Kellen and Michaela, who I've also done interviews with in the past. They're just these content creators on Twitter, but part of their draw is how open they are about their personal lives and their identities, and it's all mixed in with their content. So it's not just like pure jokes, you know, like there's a lot more going on. And yeah, I'm super appreciative just to have this small window into this community of people. We talked about how Gracie got into Twitter initially and how she got involved with this whole community. We talked about comedy in general. She shared a bit about her history of mental health, and we got to cover just the whole issue of mental health in culture, just generally speaking. Talked about her recent big move to LA from Canada, where she now works at Funny or Die. And of course, we had to touch on the repeat topic of joke theft, which has been an ongoing thing with this show. It's been really interesting and really fun just to cover with these people because it's so visceral. You know, and it really affects the joke writers who come up with this stuff. And it's been cool recently, just the past couple weeks, to follow this whole hashtag fuck Jerry movement that Meg Wright started on Twitter. I guess it started and it's kind of expanded outward from there, and it's really cool just to see the awareness spread on this whole issue at large. So yeah, a lot of really great stuff here. I love this conversation, and I hope you all take something from it. Super educational, right? Anyway, now let's get into what's really good. All right, we're here with CottonCanDaddy. Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm so happy you said my handle. Oh my God. I think only like 4 people have actually like said it out loud to me before, and it fucking kills me every time. Oh, so good. Thank you.
It's one of those handles where you see it and I'm just like, I have to do a double take. Like, wait, does it actually say that?
Yeah, it's really funny, and like I'm glad I went with it just because like ultimately my goal is to make myself laugh. So it's been like fun in that respect, but then also like some downsides of it. Like when I was interviewing for this job and I had to say my handle out loud to my now bosses. And when I was trying to get my visa, and the customs agents were like, how did your employer find out about you? Where'd you hear this job from? And I was like, oh, they actually found me on Twitter. And they like pulled up a laptop and opened Twitter. And they're like, what's your handle? And I was like, in the customs office, like CottonCanDaddy.
Was there a story behind it or why?
Yeah, there's actually a very good reason for it. So I think back in like 2016, 2017, I was an admin for this group on Facebook called In Power, and it was started as like a like a safe space for women in Vancouver and like the surrounding Lower Mainland. But then it grew exponentially and became a place where people would just like share memes, or like it was like a buy and sell group. It was still a safe space, like if you needed like somewhere to crash or needed a ride. But it was just like the community of women in and around BC and the Pacific Northwest. And it was like 35,000 strong at its peak, I think. And we were like on the news and shit. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
But like, yeah, so like I would just make like really terrible jokes and like puns, and like that was because like I had to be on there like pretty frequently, like moderating and stuff, right? So I became known as the group dad. And so like I still have people who like on like Facebook will like call me father and dad, and like I have to explain it to people, and it's really funny. But then I dyed my hair pink, and
oh
that
my God.
was yeah, so I had like bright pink hair, like bubblegum pink hair. And I think it was like 3 months after that when I started Twitter. So this was last October then. And so I was like, guys, like I need a Twitter handle. What should I be? And then one of these girls was like Cotton Can Daddy. And I was like, holy shit, that's so perfect. So yeah. And it's just, it's stuck, and I'm not changing it.
That is perfect. And it's great because now your hair is your hair still like that greenish tint, even though I just saw you a second ago. So you're still on brand.
I know. Yeah. I'm just like a different flavor cotton candy now. Once I like get bored and run out of money, which is going to be pretty soon. This move has been rough. I'm not going to be able to dye my hair anymore. And then I guess I'll have to like rebrand somehow. We'll see.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Like when I was looking over your Twitter profile, just prepping for this whole thing, I did notice something. I didn't know this before, but I saw that you joined Twitter in 2017, which is insanely recent. So, I mean, like, what initially got you into tweeting?
Yeah. So my Twitter actually says that I joined in August 2017, which is factually true. But I like made an account and immediately like freaked out and was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So then like I just never logged in again. And then I came back in October. So my first tweet was actually in October 2017. And I joined Twitter because I was like shit posting to Facebook basically, and was like posting all of the dumb stuff that you see on my timeline now to Facebook. And my friends very nicely were like, I feel like this would do better on Facebook, and you got to stop filling our feed with this stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, fine. So yeah, I like it took, I guess like maybe like 5 or 6 of my friends being like, get your shit on Twitter. You do really well there.
Right.
For me to join. And then I did. And like, yeah, it just took off, which is crazy.
Did you know anybody initially from Twitter, or how did you get started off the ground from there?
Well, I didn't know anybody on Twitter going into Twitter. Like even like my real life friends, nobody has Twitter.
Right. Yeah, that's how me too.
And then my first viral tweet happened, I think in like the first week of December or something like that. But yeah, that was like my first like past 100K tweet. And then from there, I kind of started gaining like a following. And I think I had like 4,000 or 5,000 followers or something. And Viking followed me. And that was back when Viking only had like 20,000 followers or like 16,000 something. And I replied to one of his tweets, and I can never remember like the actual things that he said, but it was like, you know how he goes off on those like coffins or ravioli?
Yes. Yeah.
Or like chicken wings or lollipops, stuff like that. There was like a list of them, and I was like, this is the worst fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was like so mad about it. I was like, I hate you so much for this. And then for like the next 2 days would just like send me more and more of these thoughts as they like popped into his head for like, this is actually ravioli. And then from there we just started talking and became friends. And then he introduced me to this entire network of Twitter people.
That's so insane. So Viking introduced you to all those people.
Yeah, Viking was my first Twitter friend. He's the reason why I am who I am today.
That's wild. I mean, by the time this whole thing comes out, you'll probably, like, was looking before we jumped on the call, and you're pretty close to 50,000 followers. So, I mean, that's
Dude, it's like about fucking time, though. Like, I have like plateaued for the last month or so, and I don't know why, and it's really frustrating. Like it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. But at the same time, the fact that like I've been going viral and at least getting like on my worst tweets 1,000 likes, but nobody's fucking following me, and it's so frustrating that like everyone has surpassed me now, and I'm like, this is so annoying to be stuck there. And I can't remember who I was complaining to. I think I was complaining to my best friend Morgan back home in Vancouver about it, and she was like, yeah, but dude, you have a fucking job. And I was
Right.
like, okay, like fair point. But yeah, hopefully I crack 50,000 in the next like week or so. That'd be cool.
Yeah, better. I mean, it's so bizarre even just hearing you frame it that way, because we all on some level know it's basically fake internet points, but you still care. Like, it still matters, and you're still comparing yourself to other people. It's kind of like an inevitable thing. So, I mean, what's your relationship to all that at this point?
I mean, like, at first it was definitely like the ego, like you said, like the fake internet points, and like it boosts your like confidence in a weird way, and it like makes you feel good, and like the dopamine, and like it's awesome. But then I think at this point it was competitive for a little bit, where like I definitely never like said this to any of my mutuals, but there was a time when me and Shen and a bunch of other people were like neck and neck in followers, and it was like I would check every day to be like, oh fuck yeah, like I'm still in the lead. So like that's how that kind of like became less about like my own popularity and success, and more about like I just want to be marginally cooler than all of my internet friends.
It is so weird how we do that. I mean, it bothers me, but at the same time, I mean, I guess when you step back, you've done that type of thing since school. I mean, we all compare ourselves to our peers and or our coworkers, or in whatever sense, and it's kind of a inevitable part of it. But it does feel like something more is riding on the line with internet followers. For whatever it's worth, I mean, at this point, you've built a personal brand through it. So, like, what's it been like since you started tweeting, like actually not just building a following, but building a following of people who know you in a way and kind of come to you for your own personal observations and feelings and happenings in your life?
Yeah, that's been the coolest result of all of this, just because before I joined Twitter, I was just terrible at the internet anyway. Like, I never had Tumblr. I barely am on Instagram. So like this whole idea of building a personal brand and having that be something that people are actually like interested in and look for and are excited about, that was like a foreign concept to me. So the fact that like that happened was huge for me, not in like a superficial like followers kind of way, but as someone who works in art and who has been pursuing comedy for a couple of years, that was like the turning point for my own belief in myself and my own confidence in terms of like, holy shit, like, yeah, like you can actually make something out of this, and you can actually do something really cool with this. And my thoughts and my ideas and the way I frame things and my personality is like something that I could actually like make a living off of, which is just huge.
Yeah, right. Whenever I talk to people with different platforms, something that always comes up in my mind, at least, is what is your relationship like with your followers in general? Kind of like how I brought up, I mean, it's your personal brand. You know that some of them are coming for certain content that you post, but I mean, is it more that, you know, you might tweet some stuff and you have some of the same people retweeting or commenting, or does it go beyond that at all?
I mean, like, I for sure notice when the same people comment and retweet, and like I know there's like a pool of at least like 12 people, let's say, who have my notifications on because they're immediately the first ones to like come back and hit the likes, and like, so it's like kind of comforting in a way. Like, you always have like this small circle of people that's just like, hell yeah, like cheering you on for like whatever you do, which is really cool, because like that's like a demographic of my followers that for me is very interesting. And I think it's like something that like I've like kind of struggled with in terms of like building a personal brand, is that like I do jump around a lot in the kind of stuff that I tweet. And like sometimes I tweet like observational shit. Sometimes I tweet like joke formats. Sometimes I tweet like super serious stuff. Sometimes I tweet like absolutely just like absurd out of the blue shit that comes into my head, usually when I'm talking to Michaela at like 2 a.m. So that's been kind of hard in terms of like connecting with followers, because you're right, like people do come back for a certain kind of content. So that's really cool to have like those really loyal followers who always like the things that I do and who always comment and who are just like excited no matter what I do, because it helps me feel like I have more creative freedom and like I don't have to find one particular thing and stick with it. But I mean, at the same time, that's also totally why I've plateaued in followers, because people are looking for consistency.
Right, you're all over the place.
Have any.
That's what I was going to ask. It is crazy how I feel the same way with my own personal feed. I mean, I'm not really in the same boat as far as trying to build a personal brand necessarily, because I mean, this is kind of my job. So I mean, I spend all day on Twitter for other brands anyway. But I mean, like even for my own personal stuff, and even with this podcast, I've found the same issues. Whereas my interests are kind of all over the place, scatterbrained, and I know what I want to talk about and what I'm thinking about. But then I have to think, oh wait, all these people, like even just like taking you for example, and Michaela and Viking and the other and Kellen and the people that I've talked to in your sphere. If they're coming to my podcast for that content and then say next week they're not getting that, they're getting something completely different, they just might never come back. So like that is like a strange aspect of this whole building a personal brand life, you know?
Yeah. And then I think from that point on too, and this like totally applies to you and your podcast, because like I definitely get the whole like having a variety podcast and trying to make it successful. That's like super difficult to do. But then I was actually just talking to Michaela about this after you guys recorded your podcast, that like I don't really care who you talk to on your podcast or what you talk about, because like you are such a good interviewer and you are so entertaining and so thoughtful, like no matter what you're doing.
Oh, shut up.
So I think I know I like don't have to like blow smoke. I'm already on your podcast. No, but seriously, so like I think that that's the key to variety and to keeping people interested and like maybe expanding the things that they're looking for and the things that they come back to podcasts and come back to Twitter for. I think you just, if you're going to continue to like have that kind of variety, or just be like me and like throw everything you have at the wall and just hope it sticks. I think you just gotta really be confident in the fact that like you're going to try really hard to make all of those different avenues really successful for you. Like it's more work for sure, and it's probably going to happen slower. But I think that variety, if you can really commit to improving in all of those different areas, or like having the same quality of content in all those areas, then I think that that's ultimately the best thing.
Why am I crying in the studio right now? That means a lot. I mean, seriously, I really appreciate you saying all that. I mean, it goes along with what we were just talking about previously, and this whole idea of kind of when you build this personal brand, you get an ego from it inevitably, and you're inevitably comparing yourself to other people, and it becomes this point-based system where just the entire idea, the entire premise of someone else taking time out of their day to listen to me talk is so insane, which I'm sure is similar to how you feel, where it's like people are taking time out of their day to follow you and repost your content and like invest in who you are as a creator, essentially. I mean, it is such a bizarre space to occupy, because you're inevitably, working that balancing act of like, okay, I have to be self-aware enough to care about my audience, but to your point, I mean, you also, if you really care about your audience, you just have to be yourself and like really put your best self and your best work out there day after day, and the right people, I guess, in an ideal world will find you eventually. So that was really sweet. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, like for real. I was so excited when you messaged me about this, because like I have been listening to your podcast for months, and
What?
I've been like, yeah, dude, I've like fingers crossed. I had like been hoping for this day. So when you messaged me, I was like, oh my God, fuck yes. I was so excited. And I texted Michaela right away. And yeah, so this is awesome. I'm really, really psyched to be on here.
Okay, have you done other podcast interviews? I know you did that one. It was like a radio show, right?
Yeah. So that radio show back in Vancouver, I was on there twice. And then after that, they actually invited me on to be like another member, which was so cool. Shout out to Chris and Nigel. They're the coolest dudes ever. And I miss being on that show all the time with them. But then unfortunately, that was like 2 weeks away from me moving to Los Angeles, but we're gonna try and set something up where I call in or like have like a good quality way for me to be on the show that doesn't just sound like I'm a caller.
Right.
So we're gonna do that for February, and that's really exciting. And then other podcasts. It's just been the radio and just been this podcast here with you now. I had like a weird interview kind of thing at this community college back home, and it was like very impromptu. Like I didn't really know it was going to happen, but like I was picking up a book or something, I can't remember, but I ran into one of my old professors, and she's an English professor. And she was like, hey, so like I follow you on Twitter and it's crazy that all this is happening. Do you want to just like come talk to my English students about like writing and creative writing? And I was like, sure. Like I like was just intending to like buy a book or drop a book off or whatever. And then I just ended up kind of like shooting the shit with this class, and they asked questions about like internet fame. It was supposed to be like a talk about writing, but it was definitely just more like an interview. Like, how did you get there? So yeah. But no, this is it.
So when you compare just your day-to-day career, obviously, I mean, you're a writer online, not just with Twitter, but now with Funny or Die, which we can get into in a little bit. It's like, how do you compare that style of output versus talking? Like, do you prefer typing and writing to talking, or are you comfortable talking?
I'm very comfortable talking.
You seem comfortable talking.
Yeah. It's weird. Like, I'm very quiet in real life, but not because I'm like uncomfortable. I just like don't have a lot to say, and I'm actually just like very comfortable with silences. I don't think that you need to like fill the air with speech unless like you have something really cool to say. But then I also have like no filter between like my brain and my mouth, or between my brain and Twitter. And like, I don't mean that in like I say bad things kind of way, but like I'll just like say something and then afterwards be like, that was so dumb. That was so fucking dumb. Like,
same.
Yeah. And it's like, and I have that on Twitter too. I'll think of something that I think is so funny, and then instead of like writing it down and banking it in my drafts and then like coming back to like revise it later and make it better like a fucking comic and a writer should be doing, I'll just like like get it out on the timeline. Yeah. And then I'll come back to it like 2 days later and be like, man, this would have been so much better if I like framed it this way. So like that's definitely the similarity that I have between talking in real life and writing, is that I don't actually like utilize the fact that you don't have to immediately throw everything out on the internet. You can revise it. Right. And that's something that I've been trying to work on really hard.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, it kind of works both ways, because I was talking to a Viking a little bit about this, and he was saying how some of his best tweets are essentially word vomit that he doesn't even remember tweeting at like 2 a.m. and stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes it really, when you just throw shit at the board, it really works. But then other times, you go back and you're like, wait, like if I just worded it this differently, it could have made the difference between like 5,000 likes and 10,000 likes, like just something like that.
That's the worst. That bugs me so much, but it doesn't stop me because I keep just throwing shit out immediately without thinking twice about it anyway. So maybe one day I'll learn.
Just pumping out content all day. I wanted to touch on this a little bit. We don't have to go too deep. I don't know how comfortable you are touching on all this, but I mean, you tweet pretty openly and pretty regularly about just depression and anxiety and mental health type stuff. So I mean, like how, generally speaking, like how important is it to you that you have the chance to express that online? Oh,
dude, it's hugely important to me. I have never had a problem with talking about that, but I've had a lot of issue being heard. So like when I was growing up, I had severe depression issues starting from the time I was probably like 11 or 12. And I tried to come to my parents about it when I was in high school. I think I was like 15 or 16. And then that was like the age where like I realized like, this isn't a normal thing. This is like, not everybody feels like this. And it was like things that I'd been expressing for years, like to my friends, or like that they'd been dealing with for years. But I came to my parents about it, and they took me to our family doctor, and he was like, take B vitamins, and then like sent me on my way.
Oh, geez.
And yeah. And then I think it was like 6 months later, I had started harming myself, and I came to my parents again, and I was like, something needs to change. Like, I don't know how to do this. And then my parents, just not to like talk shit about them or anything, because like I love them, they're great, but they never placed a lot of value on my mental health, or they just attributed it to me like, oh, you're just a moody teenager, and they never like understood like the gravity of it.
Yeah.
And it affected other areas of my life immensely the older that I got. So like I've always been a really good student. I test really well. I cannot do homework to save my life. Like I would have like high 90s for tests and quizzes, and then be getting like 20% in homework. Cause like no matter what I did, no matter where I went, like I would change my environment. I would work with music, work without music. Like I just could never fucking do homework. And then I missed a lot of school because of depression. And, when I graduated high school and I went to art school, it affected me there crazy, because it's like obviously like the difference between university and high school, even when you go to an art school, it's drastic. It's a drastic change. And I figured out pretty quickly that art school wasn't for me, which I'll tell you stories about after, because it's a fucking doozy. But then I went to just like this community college just to kind of like stay in school and not just be like sitting around and trying a bunch of different things. And I had to drop out because like I just couldn't handle the workload, and that killed me, because it was like, what the fuck? Like, am I getting dumber? Like, I've always been a good student. Like, can I just not do college? Like, am I just going to be one of these people that just can't ever do this? And then I think I was 18 or 19 at that point. No, I think I was 19 or 20 actually. And I decided to take my mental health into my own hands, and I booked an appointment with just like a general practitioner, and ran him through all the ways in which it was affecting me. And he sent me to an ADHD specialist, and she was amazing. And we like talked through all of my shit, and she was like, basically like drew me like a map. And she was like, okay, so you have anxiety and you have depression because you have ADHD that has never been dealt with. And it was just like a web of like things that caused by other things. And I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. So I started medication, and I had like a fully grasp of what was going on inside my head. And that was life altering, like just to have someone listen to me and take me seriously. And then that was also like a big realization period for me too, where it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to talk about it negatively. You don't have to have it as like an albatross, really. It's like the more candid and the more normal you are about it, I think the better it is for you. And I think the better it is for everyone around you to not feel like they're walking on eggshells, or like they can't ask or say certain things. And then ultimately, you never know who might hear you and who might need to hear that, and that like you can be open and honest about struggling, and you can be open and honest about the things that are going on in your head that you can't really control. So that's a huge thing for me. That's something I'm really, really passionate about.
Right. I mean, that's amazing that you were able to get that help and do the whole thing basically with your own will at that point. I mean, since you started down this whole path of, sorting out the mental health issues and kind of getting yourself on a track, I mean, have you since that point talked to your parents and friends about it from growing up? Like, what's your relationship like with it now?
My relationship with my dad is great. I am 100% my dad. I'm a child of 6. So I have 3 older sisters, an older brother and a younger brother. And my sisters are very much our mom, and my older brother and I are our dad. And they're just so opposite. Like, my dad is very like deadpan and very quiet, and my mom is very outgoing, very charismatic, and very like just adds energy to a room. But then like that's like always been kind of exhausting for me. So I have a really good relationship with my dad, and although he like might not understand a lot of like mental health related things, or he's like learning as he goes, the great thing is that he actually tries to learn and tries to listen and tries to take on this new information, as opposed to just shutting everything down. And my mom is not the same way, unfortunately. So I'm on stimulants, and she actually like compared that to taking acid one day. She was like, Yeah. And the funniest thing was I was doing work at home for the bar that I was managing. So I was doing like a ton of paperwork and stuff like that. And I had like things spread out all over my desk. And I was still living at home at that point. And my mom came in and she was like, see, you don't need medication in order to function. And I was like, I'm on so many drugs right now. like, like you have no idea. Like I'm like functioning at full capacity because like I was given the tools to function now.
Right.
So she told me she doesn't believe in ADHD, which was like, it's not Santa. Like you can't just not believe in it. So my mom's very resistant to it, but whatever. I just don't bring it up with her anymore. And my siblings are very, very receptive to it because they like basically went through their own journeys separately as adults, kind of like I did. So after going through all of these kind of things together, we all get to talk about it now and be like, oh, like I went through the same process as you did, or like I felt the same way that you did. So it's been a thing that's like brought all of us really close together. And it's really helped me with the way that I interact with my younger brother, who's in grade 10 now. And like the things that like I make a point of talking to him about.
Right. You get to be an example.
Yeah. Because I mean, like he's the sixth and the last one. So like, fuck, we got to get this mental health stuff down. So
we can get one of them right.
Basically. There's everything riding on him.
I think it's always really wild talking about mental health stuff between sort of younger generations and older generations, just generally, because I feel like, I mean, as a whole, I mean, obviously we know people relate through their own experiences, and, you know, up until fairly recently, there wasn't even really that much of a societal understanding of mental health. It was very compartmentalized into certain areas where people knew, oh, schizophrenia is a thing, like, oh, suicide is a thing, but there weren't vastly covered areas of people talking about this stuff. And I think for me, because I mean, I come from a pretty similar background to you insofar as, you know, my own mental health stuff with my parents, and my little sister has struggled with that since she was really young, and it was always bewildering to them, and they didn't really know what it was or how to treat it or, you know, what to make of it, because the whole conversation was just so new to them. And I don't know, for me personally, like when I look at it, I try to frame it like, I think for a lot of parents, or even just people who haven't necessarily experienced depression or anxiety, like they almost, because they're trying to view it through how they can relate. So they relate it through severe sadness or severe nervousness, and they look at these things where it's like, oh, well, I've felt really lonely, or I've felt really sad at points in my life, but they don't really, it's hard to connect the dots to them to be like, no, like depression isn't loneliness. It's not just being really sad or down about something. Like it's literally a mental black hole that is sucking you in, and you can't really rationalize it. So, I mean, like, even just like when you try to rationalize, like, oh, I'm sad because, you know, this person hurt me, or my friend died, or whatever it might be, and that's why I am sad. Like, that's a lot different than just being hit with a wave of depression that you can't explain away. And, you know, so I think because of that, then it becomes a lot harder for people that haven't experienced that to put their finger on it, because to them they just think like, oh, to my own experience, I've felt depressed, because, you know, like in popular culture you hear people use words like, oh, I'm so depressed today, or I'm feeling so anxious today, and they become almost normalized in ways that just aren't what the actual clinical definitions are. And I think for me personally, that's always been a big bridge to a kind of gap between not just my parents, but a lot of older generation people in my life and a lot of younger ones who it seems like that conversation it's getting better, but up until very recently it was difficult to know where to start.
Yeah, I totally get that. And then also too, there's like for like my parents, like they for sure have some unchecked mental health things that they need to get dealt with. And then like the more that I learn about it, the more that I could look back on interactions with my parents, or like the way that they behave, and I could assess like, oh shit, like you definitely have depression, and like you definitely need to get this checked out. Yeah. And then like that's the frustrating thing too, is that like maybe they can relate, and maybe like they could relate if they understood that what they're feeling isn't just being sad, that like you're feeling the same thing, but they just don't have that understanding themselves for like what they're going through. Like trying to explain depression to my mom is just like so frustrating because I'm like you are for sure going through the same stuff, and she's just like, no, sometimes people just have bad days. And I'm like, ugh,
It's not that.
No, like,
well, and
so
they come from a lot more of that. Even if the parents or the people in general aren't conservatives, they come just from that older generation, which had much more emphasis on pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and really just taking control of your life. Like, okay, are you having a bad day? Well, you still need to show up to work. Like, are you sick? You still need to get this stuff done. Like, are you in a bad place? You still have to take care of your kids. And that whole attitude, I think, taught generations of people just to suppress all of that,
Dude, yeah. My mom grew up on a farm in Alberta, and my dad comes from like the most Catholic family ever. So like there's just blue collar suppression of emotions, and there's like it's suppression from every angle. So like just so many different things that need to be addressed, but the same kind of mentality is like, yeah, well, you just gotta buck up and go on anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you, like, when you look at the issue of mental health as a whole, just in general right now, like, do you think it's exceptionally bad right now? And, like, if you do, like, why do you think that might be?
Honestly, like, I think that it varies so much depending on where you are and where you're from. And like, I'm learning more about that, like now living in a new country and being exposed to different cultures. The attitude towards mental health is just like, it hinges so much on where you're brought up. So like, I can't speak to like a lot of different places and, or like a lot of different like upbringings or cultures or things like that. But like, I do see it in Los Angeles culture, thankfully, and in Vancouver culture, where like the shift towards mental health has been really, really positive. And like there's actually a billboard by my apartment, and I think it's just for like a suicide helpline. I can't remember like the phone number or whatever, but it's this like beautiful painted billboard, and there's like a black man in his like early 20s, I want to say, who is like painted in these huge, beautiful pink and yellow and blue billboard. And that was the coolest thing because like just culturally, one of the things that I was actually talking to a bunch of my friends here was that like they have struggled so much with mental health because they had never felt like they were allowed to feel those things. So like, I think for me, mental health has like always been way easier because like as a girl, there's a lot more like emotions that are allowed in that scope. Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of been like eye-opening, and I definitely thought that like the attitudes towards mental health in general or the conversations were kind of all going in the same positive direction. But then like the more that I'm exposed to other people, the more I'm learning about like, no, that's just like my narrow view and my narrow experience. But like culturally, yeah, the shift for things like billboards talking about suicide, like that's really, really cool. And in Vancouver, there's a government-run campaign on all the SkyTrains and on the buses where like they kind of like dive into different mental illnesses, and then they like feature like a different person, and they just kind of like run through like what depression kind of feels like and what anxiety feels like, and like helplines are places that you can call. So like it's way more normalized in Vancouver and in Canada in general, but like being here and seeing that it's actually like publicly being addressed for things like suicide billboards, like that I think is very, very positive. I just don't know if the reception individually or if the way that people are receiving that is moving in the same kind of positive direction. But
right. Yeah, I mean, especially in just the LA area in general, like Hollywood and pop culture, I think the past few years, I mean, probably I'd say since maybe 2014, just in general, with the way the internet was moving and the way culture was moving, was just like a big year as far as a lot of like what was happening around the world was being seen through the lens of the internet for the first time for millions of people. And I feel like since that point to now, with a lot of the celebrity suicides and even just a lot of Hollywood actors and actresses who have come out and just started openly talking about their mental health issues. I mean, I feel like in a way, I mean, similar to what you said earlier about how, when you tweet openly about all this stuff and how that can then potentially be something that someone else who needs to see that for that solidarity can then relate to it and not feel so alone. Like, I feel like that exact same thing has been happening on a major scale just in pop culture in general the past few years, which has been really interesting to watch, because I feel like I don't know when it started, obviously, but I mean, I personally feel like there's been a fair shift in the past, I don't know, like 10 years maybe, as far as mental health becoming more of a problem. Like, it's hard, like you said, and like we've kind of been saying, obviously these issues have been around since the beginning of time. I mean, it's essentially different, output forms of PTSD that people have experienced, from war and, living in tribes and people like sleeping with each other's spouses and like the insecurities and the dangers of others and all that whole thing. I mean, this has been around forever, but I definitely think something about the past several years with the internet and with smart technology that something's changed where I know like in the past, I forget how many years it's been, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but in the past few years at least, suicide rates with women has spiked really bad. And it's so interesting to me to talk about because, like you said, on one hand, it's hard to gauge how the conversations are going because you can see in pop culture and in media that it's being talked about more. But at the same time, it's like, are we taking the right steps in practicality, just like you with going out of your way to get a doctor and to actually get on track? Like, are we, as a culture, are we enabling more of that type of behavior, or are we kind of putting this facade out there like, everybody has depression, like let's just all come together and just live with our depression, and then is that like having a reverse effect? Like I don't know, but it's really interesting to talk about,
Yeah, and I think that just your last point is like a very fine line to walk, especially within like the comedy community, the whole just living with your depression thing,
right.
Because like
I'm depressed, I'm a sad boy, I'm a sad girl, like that whole
there's a huge difference between being open and candid and comfortable talking about your mental illnesses, but then there's also like you kind of run the risk of just being so comfortable there that like you don't actually take the extra steps to change it, because then like it has become who you are, and there's so many ways to just like be comfortable being sad if you let yourself.
Right.
So like I think that's like a careful line that we should all be aware of, that you can be open and honest and you can talk about these kind of things as long as you don't let it keep you like so set there. Like you don't let it like run your life. You don't let it become your identity. You actually are proactive or trying to make things better for yourself, and you don't just sit there and be like, well, I'm depressed, so that's just who I'm going to be forever. It's like just another like weird thing about having a personal brand is that like if you find success in that and if people respond well to that, then that's going to make it that much easier to just be depressed online forever because it's working for you,
Yeah, it becomes like fetishized almost in some weird way.
Totally.
For you personally, like, do you feel that Twitter is like a net positive for mental health issues, or do you think it makes it worse generally?
I would say positive for sure. Just because I think giving people the opportunity to be exposed to these kind of conversations and to be exposed to more people who might be experiencing the same thing, I think that's always a positive. Just giving people the opportunity to get something beneficial out of it, I think that immediately makes it a positive. And like most of the DMs that I get are people who saw one of my mental health tweets and like wanted to thank me for it. Like I've tweeted about my experience getting a doctor a lot. And like, I don't know if you saw it, but like a few months ago when I was moving down here, actually, I like wrote out in detail the steps that I had to go through in order to get my diagnosis. And before that, I just talked about like my like experience of being undiagnosed and like how shitty that was. And like the response from that was so many people who were like, holy shit, like I had no idea that it was that easy. Like it's been so daunting for me to try and find a doctor or find somebody to talk to about this. So I just like never have. Or there were so many people who were like, I feel seen and like I feel less alone now, and you've given me the confidence to try and do something about it. Or like I just think giving anyone the opportunity to find a community is the best way to start fixing things like mental health problems. And I think that Twitter and smart technology and just anything that helps the world become a little bit smaller is ultimately a positive thing for mental health.
Yeah, it's cool hearing that you have what it sounds like as a positive relationship with the internet, whereas a lot of the people I talk to, the conversation tends to teeter the other way, where there's kind of, you know, for someone like me or someone like you, we work online, we spend a lot of time online, so it kind of becomes like this love-hate thing where you're spending all your time on it and you get a lot out of it, but it can also be addictive, and you can also catch yourself in those vortexes of just comparing yourself or whatever. So I mean, like, just generally speaking, do you feel like your relationship with the internet is more healthy at this point?
Yeah, I totally do. Like you said, like I work on the internet, so I'm online all the time. And okay, the update with Apple technology where they like give you a breakdown of your screen time was the most upsetting thing to ever happen to me. Like, because I just like, I have to be on my phone or I have to be on my laptop all day, but you don't get to tell your phone that. So like at the end of the day, like I'll go home and I'll like accidentally like swipe left on like my lock screen and it'll say like some obscene number of hours. Yeah. And like, it might as well just say like, you're a piece of shit. Like you need to go outside and read a book. And like, it makes me so angry. Sorry, I feel very strongly about that.
I love it.
Yeah, but no, I think that my relationship with the internet, I think it like kind of was unhealthy for a while. Like when you first start kind of popping off and the initial like dopamine, that's the addictive kind of phase where you're like, holy shit, like this is awesome. I'm really popular. I'm trending in so many places. Like it feels good. Yeah, and then that's where you kind of start to get addicted, and it's really bad to be that attached to it. But then for me, once I like got past that and once I actually like kind of fell into this little community, it's been so beneficial since then. Like I have so many people who like I genuinely care about and who I know genuinely care about me, and it's really helped me build a larger, more diverse support system. And like I've met some of my now best friends through Twitter. And yeah, I think ultimately it's a positive thing.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about that, because this whole concept is so bizarre for, I think, most normal people who just, they hear something like that and they think, what do you mean you met friends in real life through the internet in that way? Because when you think Twitter or Reddit or any of these kind of deeper internet forums and platforms, it's not really, you think most people spend their time on those platforms while they're at work, just kind of shooting the shit and passing time. Like you don't really think of it as a place where you'd actually build relationships with people. But with you and with this whole kind of small niche group of people, I mean, you guys have all become good friends. I mean, I'm interested to hear, how has your relationships developed in that way? Because like, I know you've hung out with Michaela in person before. Like, have you actually hung out with a lot of these people, or what's that whole process been like?
Okay, well, it was really weird for me living in Vancouver and then falling into this group of like, I don't know, it's like joke Twitter, like humor, funny Twitter. I don't know what you'd call it. The funny people on Twitter. Let's just call it that. But like most of them, for whatever reason, I have no idea why, but like everyone lives in Arizona. And I don't know if like they found each other or like they just decided that they were going to like take over the internet together and they were already friends in real life. But like that entire group that I became really close with, they're all either in LA or in Arizona. So like I would be sitting at home in bed on like a Friday night looking at my phone and everyone would be hanging out because like I don't know, let's say like Kellen went to Arizona for the weekend. And so it would just be like a crew of like 8 people who were like all hanging out. And I would just be like sitting there listening to like sad music, looking at everybody's like snaps together, being like, have fun. So that was like a trip for me when I moved down here and actually got to like meet everybody. So like, I don't know if that's like a common thing or if like I just happened to luck out and become friends with internet people who managed to like become tight in real life.
Yeah, not get murdered by a serial killer.
Yeah, so far so good. It's really funny. Like the first weekend that I was here, so I got here on like really, really late on a Sunday. And then that next weekend, my mom was like, so like, how's everything going? Or like, she was really worried about me, like genuinely very worried.
Yeah.
Because it's a big, scary city and you like hear bad things about LA. So she was like, are you being safe? And I was like, yeah, don't you worry about it. Like I'm not talking to like strangers. Like I'm staying on like all the main roads. And I was literally like at a bar with like 6 people from the internet I just met for the first time. No, I've met so many people. I met Joey and Kelly and Jody and Eric Curtin, who got me the job here. And I met Michaela. I actually went to her house for Thanksgiving, which was so fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then she came out my way, and we went to the comedy store together.
Oh, no way. Who'd you see?
It was just like, I think it was like a Thursday or something.
So or like 12 people there.
It was actually like weirdly busy, and David Spade showed up.
Yes, dude, yeah, I saw him when I was there too last.
Yeah, it was really weird. Where it was like 9:30 on like a Wednesday or a Thursday, and I was like, "What the fuck is David Spade doing here?" But yeah, so that was really fun, and I met Kellen, and then I met like a lot of people from the internet that like I wasn't really tight with, but I knew existed, like. Alexa, who I'm closer with now that I've actually like met her in real life. She's like had me at a couple of her parties and she's so sweet. Aubrey, Jen, who I maybe had talked to twice before I met her. And now she's like one of my favorite people ever. So like I've met like basically everyone, I think, except for Viking. God damn it.
Oh, whoa.
I still met Viking.
You're first.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going to try and make my way out to Arizona, if for no other reason than to fucking meet Viking and Grace, finally.
Just once. That's hilarious. Yeah. The first person who introduced you to all these people and you haven't met them.
I know. And he's been out here twice.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, well, at least now you're there. I mean, so it's a lot easier. You're not in Canada, so chances are you'll run into him now.
Yeah, my chances are greatly increased.
Definitely. Like Viking just randomly decides to go to Alberta or whatever. I'll be there this Tuesday. And
oh my God, yeah, casual weekend trip.
Of course, like you do. I mean, it is what it is. Like what's been, since you moved down there, what's been the biggest like just culture shock in general?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. It's like we're so culturally different. So like, I don't know like what the biggest culture shock has been. I think one of the weirdest things was walking into a grocery store and having like so many aisles of alcohol like that. Like I knew that you guys like sell booze everywhere here.
Yeah.
But then like, I still like walked into a Target and I was like, what the fuck? Like that.
Right.
Bottle of vodka is the size of a baby. Like, what are you selling it at a Target? Like, Jesus Christ. And then I went into a Walmart and there were like guns there. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is wild. And I texted Michaela about it. I was like freaking out. I was like, there's wine in a grocery store. And she's like, I know. So that was weird. I think the biggest thing for me has been accents, honestly. Cause like, I don't ever think of myself as having an accent. And then like I moved down here and that was one of the first things that my boss brought up was my accent.
Really?
And like, someone brought it up in like a meeting too. And I was like, I speak so normally. All of you guys have accents. And it's, the temperature.
Oh my God.
Holy shit. I'm going to die in the summer. It's like 21 degrees Celsius right now, which is like somewhere in the like low 70s Fahrenheit. I don't know. I'm never going to learn Fahrenheit. I can't do it no matter how hard I try. But this is like
we're the opposite. So it's like,
this is like June weather in Vancouver.
Oh my God.
Like,
so is that the warmest it gets?
No, it'll get up to like the like mid 30s in Celsius, which is like 80, 90 something, but
Okay.
for like a month.
Okay.
And then it'll be very like temperate. So like it's hot as fuck here. And there are parrots. Did you know that there are like wild parrots
Oh, yeah.
in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like one of the first nights that I was sleeping in my new apartment, I like woke up at like 6 a.m. because I swear to God, I was like, I hear a parrot. And I like thought I was like dreaming, and I tried to go back to sleep, and I was like, no, there's legitimately a parrot somewhere. So I like thought like someone had like a pet or something, and I looked at my window and there were fucking parrots, and I was like, this is wild. I have seen more parrots than I've seen like crows. It's crazy. It still blows my mind. I've been here for 3 months. It still blows my mind.
It's amazing. Yeah, LA is just, it's one of those places where actually, when you spend some time there, it does live up to what the movies depict it as. I mean, there is literally everything in that town. Like, it's not, and people are so, like, the first time I went, I'm trying to think back, I think the first time I visited LA, we spent most of the time just in the actual, like, metropolitan, like, sort of center-ish of LA, whereas obviously it expands into countless suburbs, and it's such a vast area, and it's crazy, like, when you actually just start driving around, and it's like the stretch from east to west is just hours and hours of traffic, and it's just wild how many people are there. Like, it feels crazy. I mean, like, the only thing crazier than I guess I've experienced is New York City, which is obviously like everybody's compiled into this very tiny area. I mean, it's like that, but it's such a bizarre place, man. I mean, have you been enjoying it? Like, do you feel like it's home yet?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't feel not at home here, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I was pretty, I don't know. I don't get nervous. I don't like freak out over things. So like I wasn't nervous getting on the plane. I wasn't nervous getting off the plane. So like I already like came here feeling very comfortable. So I'm happy here. I'm really happy here. I'm really comfortable. I don't know if I'd call it home yet, but I think that's just because like I haven't had enough time to like really go many places. So I think like the more familiar I become with the city, the more I'm going to feel like nestled in and at home.
Right. Have you spent, like, obviously you've met people from Twitter, and I'm sure you're hanging out with people from work and mutuals there, but I mean, has it been easier or hard for you on like a relative scale, just finding real friends to spend time with?
It's been very difficult, but that's just because like I haven't had time to like go out and do things. Like moving here has been like, it was way too easy at first. Like, okay, so I got my visa the day I went to the airport because I'm on a visa through NAFTA. So that's how you have to do it. Mm-hmm. You go to the airport, you buy your ticket, and then at customs, they like check over all your shit, and it was done in like 30 minutes. And then I had a visa.
Wow.
And yeah. And then I found my apartment within like 3 days of being here. And it was all like so simple at first. And then the other shoes dropped. Yeah. And it's been like so annoying. Like ordering furniture, IKEA canceled my order and never told me.
What?
So I was like waiting for furniture for like a month, and I called them 4 times in a week, and they kept redirecting me to different people. And then just like the line would go dead, and they would just like leave me in dead air. So like
Jeez.
So like that's been really difficult. Just like little things like that. I had the worst case of tonsillitis immediately after New Year's. I didn't even like do anything. My best friend came down here for New Year's, which was awesome. And we just like went to like a few different bars and then came home and made nachos and like didn't really do anything crazy. And the next day I was dying, and I was on 3 different kinds of antibiotics, and I was out for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. So like it's just been like one thing after another. Oh, and I'm sure you've been following my fucking issues with the bank, which has been the most frustrating thing I've ever had to deal with.
I'm so sorry.
I literally had like $30 for, I think, a 4-week period.
Oh my God.
I know. And I had to go into the bank 8 different times. And like, it's been a struggle.
Wait. Like, have you gotten your IKEA furniture yet though?
No.
What?
No.
We have to start like a harassment campaign on Twitter to be like, come on, IKEA, what the hell?
Yeah, so they canceled my order. They like refunded my credit card, didn't say anything about it, and I was just sitting here twiddling my thumbs. And then I was going to order more furniture, but then I couldn't because I didn't have access to any of my money because the bank froze my accounts. So like just like and like one thing after another. But like I finally have access to all of my paychecks that have been piling up now, which is very cool for things like living and paying rent. So I'm gonna go furniture shopping, I think, next week. I have like half my furniture, so I think that's also like contributed to the whole not feeling at home thing because like I'm living half moved in. But I work with the coolest people, so like I hang out with them, and I'm gonna start going to open mics and doing cool things like that too. Now that my schedule in my life is kind of like starting to level out, so I'm really looking forward to that because like I've never been a super social person. I'm always okay just like hanging out with myself, but now I think just like the hype of like living in a new city, I'm so down to just like go everywhere and meet everyone. So yeah, I'm gonna start taking advantage of some free time soon, which should be really exciting.
And you're in LA where there's just endless things to do. I mean, you said open mics. Are you getting into like stand-up comedy? Like, have you done that in the past? Like, what are you thinking for that?
Yeah, so I used to do stand-up in Vancouver.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, but nothing like crazy. Like Vancouver, the comedy scene is very limited. There's like 2 actual comedy clubs. And then there's just a bunch of different venues where it's like 3-story houses that like 10 people rent out together, and they've turned the basement into like a little venue. So like I would hop around and do a bunch of those. And I did one stand-up night at the bar down the street from the bar that I used to manage. So I really want to get back into stand-up because I think it's just exciting to like test things out on a new culture and a new crowd. And plus, like, I can make so many more jokes because I'm foreign. Like the well of cheap Canadian jokes is so deep, and I'm really excited to start making like I'm new in town, really basic jokes that are guaranteed for a laugh.
Dude,
so
seriously though, you have so much context to work with because especially in LA, I feel like it's just a lot of comedians that move to LA. They end up just staying there for years and years, so all their material and their experience just kind of starts to sound really similar. Mm-hmm. You know, so you get to bring like an actual open book full of new perspectives and things that maybe will actually stand out from all the rest of these LA normies, you know?
LA normies. Yeah, totally. So I'm really excited to give that a shot. And that's another really cool thing too, is like being in a city fueled by creative people from all sorts of different places, all looking for the same thing. Like that's such a cool environment to be in.
Right.
Because like working in comedy and working in art is super difficult. And this whole culture of people who are not necessarily struggling, but who have decided to go like an unconventional, difficult path, like that's and like a very inspiring thing to be surrounded by all the time, and it's very motivating.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel so bad. We've been talking for an hour, and I haven't even asked you how working with Funny or Die has been. Like, how's it going down there?
No, I knew, like, I saw the time, so I just like checked off another hour for this room, and no one else is using it.
Boom.
So, yeah. But yeah, Funny or Die is insane. It's so fun. Like, I don't know. Do you have anything in particular you want answered? Because like I could probably just talk forever about this place.
I mean, just like what's the company culture like? 'Cause, I mean, obviously you came into it, like you said. I didn't know this prior to you saying it, but you said Eric Curtin helped get you the job, which is Dubstep for Dads on Twitter. Mm. And I know, does he work with Funny or Die? He
did before I started here. So like, like I did not think I was going to get this job. So that group chat, Mickey Mouse Fuckhouse, you're in it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So I don't know if you like remember or if you saw this, but in October, Eric was like, hey, so there's an entry-level position available at Funny or Die if anyone who lives in Los Angeles like wants a job. And a couple people who live in Arizona, they're like, yeah, dude, like that'd be awesome. And I was like, I need that job.
I will murder all of you and your families for this job.
Like I'm the farthest one away, but please.
Yes.
So he sent me the info, and it like just sounded like right up my alley, and I was like, fuck yeah, let's give it a go. Like, what's the worst that could happen? So I sent in my resume and an application, and then I think over the course of like 2 weeks, there was a phone interview with David, who is now my boss and my hiring manager. And then Chris, who is like my boss, who's the head of our department. And then there was a video interview that was like an hour long, where I met the entire team of people that I work with. So there's 4 of them, where they like came in twos and just like asked me whatever questions they had and vice versa. And we just like kind of got to like chat and get to know each other through a Skype call, which was really, really cool. And then I sent in some sample work, and then I think it was like a Tuesday afternoon, they called me and they're like, hey, so do you want to talk about visas? And like every step of the way, I was like, okay, it's been a good run, but this is where it ends for me. Like I like never, ever, ever expected to like actually get it. So like this whole thing just feels like I've been like tripping and stumbling the whole way, and it just happened to work out so well.
Dude, I'm so happy for you. I was just talking to, I think I talked to Michaela about this on the podcast. I mean, it's just so cool to see content creators at your caliber actually making money through the platforms that you've helped create and like the networks that you become a part of. I mean, this is like the dream for someone like you who's actually gotten involved with online culture to the degree you have. I mean, just from what, a year ago? I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. Like I am just a dumbass on the internet, and now I have a salary and benefits. Like what the fuck? It's so ridiculous. And I came into the company at like a very, very cool time. So I didn't know this until I got here, but last January, they went through a crazy layoff transitional period. And there's actually only 60 people that work in the company right now. So like it's very sparse. It feels kind of like empty sometimes, but it's also very cool because like I get to be here at a new kind of like rebuilding point. So like my team is like short form digital stuff. So we're like memes and short videos that end up on Twitter and Facebook and articles and obviously like all that kind of stuff. So it's cool to be able to get involved in so many different areas of the company because like it involves so much more than what the job description was and what I thought I was going to be doing. And I'm like so happy about it. It's such a cool atmosphere.
And you're like a jack of all trades with this stuff. I mean, you talked about how you went to art school, which I didn't know. That's super cool. I mean, I've seen some of your graphic design work on Instagram and Twitter, which is awesome. And it's like, so you do that, and then you do, this online persona, then you also do stand-up and all that. So, I mean, with the people you're working with, are they also kind of jack of all trades? Like, you work with a lot of comedians? Like, what's the culture like there?
Yeah, well, that's the coolest part about all of this is that, like, no matter what department people are working in, the underlying commonality between everyone is that love of comedy. And, like, whether or not, like, they're comedians themselves, they're just, like, really fucking funny, creative people. So the people that I work with, Tam is a stand-up comedian. Well, she's done stand-up before. She's done stand-up a couple times, and we want to start going to open mics together. But she's a verified account on Twitter, and she's an actress. So she's in a lot of these like sketches and stuff like that. So she is very creative and very funny and a comedian in a lot of different mediums. And then, like everyone that I work with is just so funny. It's weird. Like I thought it was going to be like small fish, big pond kind of thing where like I got here and I was like, oh fuck, like I'm not as funny and cut out for this as I thought it was. But it was totally the opposite. And like their creativity and their humor totally fuels me. And like I have grown so much in the 3 months that I've been here. And it's such a cool company to be a part of. Cause like there's a lot of different companies who kind of run in the same way in terms of like publication. Like, I don't know, like Huffington Post or like Vice or like BuzzFeed or any of those kind of like online media companies. But this one is so unique just because of that comedy aspect to it.
Yeah. So what you're saying is fuck Jerry would kill it at your job.
Yes. Fuck Jerry would do such a good job at photocopying everybody else's work and then taking credit for it. That he would nail it over here.
At this point, what do you think you would ever do if you met him?
I don't know.
Would you like actually hug him and be like, I'm sorry for being a jerk, or do you slap him?
I'm not a physical person, but I am very capable of cutting a bitch down. Like I'm not proud of it, but like I have made people cry with words because like I'm a writer and I'm a comedian and like words are what I know. So like I feel like I would have choice things to say. I kind of hope I have the opportunity just so that I can see what I would do, because I couldn't really tell you. Right. I think it would depend on where I met him. Like if he just waltzed into the office one day, first of all, that would be the day that hell freezes over, because everyone here hates fuck Jerry so much. But I think just like the idea of being able to call security and watching him get escorted out of the building would be just like so satisfying. And I would for sure take my camera out and immortalize that forever.
I'd love it to be one of those moments where like you're like, oh, can I get a selfie? And you get the Snapchat selfie, and then you caption it like this fucking guy. Like,
oh my god, yeah, that'd be perfect. That'd be so good.
I mean, so obviously with what you do, you're a big online original content creator, and it feels like you listen to the episode I do with Michaela, and this is something that I've been trying to talk about a little bit more on the show, and obviously on the internet as well, and you have too, just how in the past couple of years it's really felt like these online comedians or joke writers, whatever you want to say, have been starting to get a lot more attention and clout, which is super cool to see. And I was wondering, like, with this whole Funny or Die series that you've been writing that I've noticed, the Extremely Funny and Extremely Online series, like, was that your idea, or was that there before you got there? Or what's the whole story with that?
So that was my idea, and that was one of the first projects I was really, really excited to get started on, because part of why they brought me on, a huge part of why they brought me on, is because of my understanding of digital comedy and my appreciation for it. And that's like a direction that the company is trying to expand into. And I think